This is the afternoon of the 28th of July, 2024. Clip put up by Revolver, published on the 25th. Title, Absolutely Devastating. 1-minute clip reveals the entire U.S. media's propaganda game. But now, you're likely well aware they were dealing with a regime-run propaganda machine. It's almost impossible not to see the U.S. media act as a weapon for the deep state, doing their bidding at every turn. Yet there are moments when the propaganda is so glaringly obvious and damaging that it has to be called out. The situation involving camel-face on her knees Kamala Harris, the border czar, is one of those instances. It's quite a spectacle and perfectly illustrates just how far the media will go to bolster the widely unpopular vice president. As you also know, the U.S. border has spiraled out of control. In the first 100 days, Joe Biden scrapped all of the Trump's successful policies that had kept our border secure and American citizens safe. When things started to unravel, Biden threw up his hands, pretending to be clueless about the chaos in a bid to deflect responsibility, the one thing Joe was actually good at, and to seem concerned about the surge of illegals he invited over. Biden appointed camel-face on her knees Kamala Harris as border czar. From that moment on, the border debacle became her burden to bear, a burden she never managed to unburden. Can we undo ourselves from Kamala Harris? Let's listen to this clip. Plays for 36 seconds.
By what has been, what can be, unburdened by what has been. 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 What we can see, what we believe can be, unburdened by what has been. What can be, unburdened by what has been. What can be, unburdened by what has been. What can be, unburdened by what has been. Imagine what can be and be unburdened.
Does she sound like a broken record or what, huh? I mean, come on, the thing's insane. Now, with the border as a top election issue, the media is scrambling to change the narrative. They're pushing the claim that Kamala was never officially appointed border czar. Unfortunately for them, the internet remembers everything. Let's listen to what Bring the Hair Plug Joe has to say.
I've asked her, the VP today, because she's the most qualified person to do it, to lead our efforts with Mexico and the Northern Triangle and the countries that help. We're going to need help in stemming the movement of so many folks stemming the migration to our southern border.
Harris is sitting right beside that idiot when he's talking. Kamala was even tasked with leading diplomatic efforts with Mexico, El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras regarding the border. Pretty important stuff, right? It's almost as if the border was her responsibility or something. Didn't she go to El Salvador and Guatemala? I'm almost positive. I remember making a video about that. Vice President Kamala Harris, POTUS asked me to lead our diplomatic work with Mexico, El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras to address the situation at the southern border. We have to address the root cause of migration. It won't be easy work, but it's necessary. That's what she said. Unfortunately for America, Kamala didn't take her position very seriously. I see why M.I. Holt. Do you have any plans to visit the border? Harris, at some point, we've been to the border. Holt, you haven't been to the border. Harris, and I haven't been to Europe. Listen to this stupid bitch.
Put a button.
Okay.
Do you have any plans to visit the border?
At some point, we are going to the border. We've been to the border. So this whole thing about the border, we've been to the border. We've been to the border.
You haven't been to the border.
And I haven't been to Europe. And I don't understand the point that you're making. I'm not discounting the importance of the border.
Well, Now our media is running over for Kamala once again, lying straight to your face. Spreading fake news and disinformation. Don't be fooled. Camel face on her knees, Kamala Harris is, without a doubt, the border czar, even if the media no longer wants to admit it. This 1-minute clip exposes just how far the fake news will go to interfere and influence yet another U.S. election. Journalists were calling Kamala the border czar until 5 minutes ago. Don't let the media gaslight you. Let's listen to this clip.
Quote unquote border czar. Vice President Harris was not a border czar.
Meantime, Vice President and border czar Kamala Harris facing some backlash.
What he said about Harris and immigration was not true. She was never appointed border czar.
And this will be her first visit to the U.S.-Mexico border region since she was appointed as the border czar by President Biden.
People are going to have to counter the misinformation. You already hear folks talking about the border czar. She wasn't the border czar.
President Biden tapped Kamala Harris, Vice President Kamala Harris, to be the border czar.
Now, she wasn't the border czar. That's what Republicans labeled her.
They were very critical of Kamala Harris, especially in her role as border czar.
Now what she's up against is folks lying about her border record, calling her a border czar.
Kamala Harris, who was appointed as the border czar.
The Biden team didn't declare her the border czar. They wanted her to work on kind of the root causes of immigration.
There has been so much criticism against Kamala Harris. You know, she was the border czar.
Calling her sort of the border czar, which wasn't necessarily the case.
So the border, if they weren't planning to address it in a major way, do not make her your border czar. She met with some of the Northern Triangle countries, but nothing has effectively changed.
It's incredible, isn't it? We recently wrote a more in-depth piece on the media's border czar shell game. We encourage you to read it and discover how this whole saga began and when they were first called out. Watching that 1-minute media clip, two thoughts immediately spring to mind. First, Kamala Harris is such a weak candidate that the media is willingly sacrificing the last shred of credibility they might have had. And it's only going to get worse. The more she speaks, the more she deteriorates. You can tweak failed policies and flip-flop on hotbed issues, but you can't fix a terrible personality. And unfortunately, that's exactly what Kamala's got. She seems unlikable. The second takeaway is that our media propaganda game is so over the top that even North Korea officials must be watching in awe. Well, I hope you took a look at that other clip that I posted about that general. I mean, this lady is absolutely dangerous. She always has been. Problem is, they never give us a choice. Ever. I'll attach the link. Let me know what you think about the border czar. Camel face on her knees, Kamala Harris.